The iPhone is a really awesome camera these days, especially if you know how to edit the raw files that you get out of this thing. So I figured it'd be a good time to make an iPhone photo editing tutorial on Adobe Lightroom. And this is how I edit most of my iPhone photos. Let's get into it. So here's a photo that I took in Dubai on my iPhone 15 Pro Max earlier this year. You can see the settings right here and the camera. I just used the default app, shooting raw. So let's just reset these edits to the original. You can see the colors especially are the biggest giveaway of an iPhone photo. This looks horrendous to me. And usually I start the iPhone edits because they're pretty similar with one of my presets that I made specifically for the iPhone. This one, let's just pick iPhone 2. The exposure's all screwed up, but that's just something I don't really pay attention to in my presets. So just reset that immediately, it looks better. And the purpose of this preset is just to reduce the obvious telltale signs of an iPhone photo. So primarily it is actually the reduction in the clarity and tiny bit of dehaze reduction as well, just to further reduce the sharpness, even reduce the sharpening here, as well as just reducing the contrast and adding a little bit of shadow detail with a secondary function of just adding some interesting colors that I like to play with. So let's get a little bit closer to the actual final result here, starting with fine-tuning the highlights and contrast, get to a more satisfying level. We don't need this pointer here because there's already enough contrast in this photo, in my opinion. I like a little bit of flatter look for this and just focus on the color contrast instead of actual contrast. Temperature is a little bit too not blue for my liking. The blue really brings out that cyberpunk futuristic look, and the tint is a little bit too much here towards the purple. Now when you do this, this color is really ugly to me. The rest of these colors look good. So I would go yellow and reduce the saturation of that. And I really like the contrast brought on by these brake lights of the car. So we're just gonna bump that up. Generally, what I like to do in all of my edits is just to think about why I like the photo in the first place and exaggerate those qualities, fine-tuning the color a little bit more. And we're getting so much closer now already to the photo that I showed you in the beginning. It's perhaps a little bit too little contrast, and honestly, 80% of the edit can be done in 3 minutes, especially if you make presets or utilize them. But then this tiny little fine-tuning of all the colors, especially, and everything really, is what most of the editing actually comes in. So it's a lot of little fine-tuning for tiny little details that you don't necessarily notice at first glance, but really adds up over a time, over your portfolio, to create a consistent look and to get better at editing and taking pictures. So what I like to do is to get to a decent starting point in the first 5 minutes, just edit in bulk so many of the different photos. And then I come back and look at it again and try to get the remaining 20% of the way there. Now, of course, I already knew what I wanted to do with this one because I edited this a long time ago. And this one looks pretty close to what I have in mind. And let's see how close it is to the initial original edit. The only difference here is my new edit has a little bit more contrast in the highlights, but the colors are pretty close. So this would be a little bit closer to what I did initially. But yeah, this looks pretty good to me. And yeah, like I said, the fine-tuning part is the most difficult part to master, and also knowing where you want to go with the edit. The actual tools to use are the same for everybody, for every situation. Knowing how to use them is a little bit more difficult to explain, to be honest. It just takes years of developing a sense, and it is subjective anyway. Not everyone's gonna like this edit. People are gonna call it fake or over-exaggerated. Some will like it, but this is generally my process. If you wanna get the iPhone editing presets, they are on my website, and there's more tutorials of all kinds of editing on this channel. So check out those videos as well. Hopefully this was helpful.